12 minutes past the hour here on the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Today's my birthday, by the way. I'm very excited to be here on my birthday and very excited to talk to Jose Sanchez, covers the Niners for Sports Illustrated. Jose, what's going on, man?
Dude, it's your freaking birthday and you're working on it, doing this. You're a grinder.
Dude, I love doing this, though, you know. And plus, my wife's at work, my kids are at school. This is the best time to do it. Otherwise, I'd be home alone on my birthday. So I'm like, hey, might as well. I'm free. I know.
In the words of Antonio Brown leaving the Raiders.
Exactly, right? So, Jose, I want to talk to you about, there's been a lot of talk about the Niners possibly acquiring a big defensive end. Now, we've heard names like Myles Garrett. We've heard names like Max Crosby. We've even heard names like Joey Bosa. Now, all of these are, in my opinion, are still they're just imaginary dreams. Like, we don't know if they can actually pull this off. I would imagine with Myles Garrett is going to be a pretty fat bidding war for his services. But let's start with that first scenario. Okay. Let's start with scenario A, which is Myles Garrett. How realistic do you think this scenario is, the Niners acquiring a guy like Myles Garrett for, let's say, the number 11 pick or a package of picks? And do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
I'll set it like a 5% chance. I'm a probability guy. I like to say likely, most likely, in percentages. So I'll put that as 5%. Not that it's totally impossible. It's just, I think it's more so on the side of the Browns. Like, how would that work on their end? Like, they would have to believe probably they're going to, I think, get dinged on his last contract. And then also, if you're the 49ers, how are you going to also fit his extension? And if you're the 49ers, we already have Bosa. We already have our lead dog juggernaut as a pass rusher. You know, you're not a super team where you don't have the luxury where you can be like, we have two juggernauts. Because as soon as you acquire Myles Garrett, he becomes your number one. And Bosa's number two, which is dope to have. But it's like, all right, now what do we do with the rest of our defensive line? What do we do with linebacker that looks razor thin? What do we do with safety? You know, offensive line is not as bad as people say, but we could use a boost there. So what are we doing to allocate these sources on these one guys? So I think, in terms of acquiring him, yeah, it's going to take the 11th pick, but it's going to take more than that. You're probably going to have to look at it maybe like a semi-Trey Lance situation where you're giving up 2 first-rounders, right? But if you're the Browns, it's like, okay, 11th pick is cool, but next year, wait, you're the 49ers. You're probably going to be picking high up in the 20s, especially if we give you Garrett. Like no, like why would you trade him to the 49ers if you're the Browns? Number one, okay, NFC makes sense. Then what else? What else is there to give? You know, you don't have a player for you to give me. We don't want Deebo Samuel. Why would you want Deebo Samuel for Myles Garrett in the first round pick? If anything, that diminishes the first round pick you just give him. So I'd say like no more than 5% chance of the 49ers, because that's not, you already have your lead dog. You need someone more like complimentary or more just more supporting cast to become a collective strong unit again.
Well, and then there was this, obviously this is just a fictional trade proposal. But to me, like, I would do this trade, but to me, this is still, it's very fictional because it would be more than this, I would think.
Yeah.
Which is, we get Myles Garrett, the Browns get number 11 pick, this year's number 99 pick, and next year's second round pick. I don't think that's enough.
Hell no.
I really don't. Even if you threw in Deebo Samuel, they'd be like, oh, you can keep him. We don't really want that guy.
No, if you threw in Deebo Samuel, they'd ask for another pick just out of offense a little bit, because it's like, what is he going to do in that team?
I've heard somebody else say, oh, well, why don't we offer them Leonard Floyd so they have a defensive end? They don't want Leonard Floyd. They'd be like, that's great. I mean, thanks. You know, it's like, do you want gravy on your mashed potatoes too? Like, I mean, come on. So, look, if this was the real scenario and this is what they wanted, then I mean, I would say yes all day. I'd be like, all day. I'd be like, let's go. Let's do it. This would be the kind of trade proposal that would go through if, let's say, like Nico Harrison was the general manager of the Niners. He'd be like, hey, let's do it, and I won't tell anyone else about it. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, man. But I think this would be, if that was a real scenario, then yes. I wouldn't even hesitate. I'd be like, yes. But if you look at his numbers, though, I mean, the guy's a monster. I mean, if there's one player that demands a big return to get his services, it's Myles Garrett. I mean, the guy, looking at his sack totals, my God, the last 5 years, 14, 16, 12, 10, 13 and a half. You know what I mean? Like, this guy's a monster when it comes to his overall sack numbers, and he's a huge difference maker. But like you were saying, if we were to get him, he would, essentially kind of diminish what we can do on the other end of reinforcing the defensive line, reinforcing our linebacking core, trying to find that third corner to complement Ronaldo Green and Demo Lenore. So I think he would definitely leave us with a much slimmer team, not as deep as we want it to be.
And then think about it. If you're the 49ers, what has been like, what was your downfall, at least in that last Super Bowl run? Is you guys were a little too top heavy. And the time for you guys to finally start getting like more even keeled, more leveled out, now you're pretty much going to, while he would in a sense make you more, obviously more threatening, more lethal, but there's going to come a point where it's like, okay, there's going to be probably stretches of the game where the pass rush is still not getting there despite us having Garrett and Bosa, and all of a sudden it's like, why? Oh yeah, we don't have a linebacker outside of Fred Warner. Oh yeah, we don't have our third corner, or maybe Ronaldo Green isn't panning out like we want. Now we only have one corner. There's still, it's just I get the sexiness. It makes sense, especially with those picks, because you're not really giving up much, especially if you're the 49ers. You're probably you're one of the worst teams to pick it in the first round. So if you're saying like, oh, 11th pick for Myles Garrett, I'd do that in a heartbeat. But that's just funny. I keep seeing that 33rd team making these ridiculous hypotheticals, and it's like, are these guys okay? Like, who's making these trades up? Is this a 49ers fans running that account? Because there's no way in hell like the Browns would ever accept that.
Yeah, they want more than that. There's no way. Now, if you go to scenario B, which is another great player, which is Max Crosby. Now, look, we all know that the Raiders don't like to trade or do any kind of business with San Francisco, right? But now they're in Vegas, and you got Tom Brady who's there, who's overseeing a lot of what's going to be going on. I mean, I'm sorry, but if Tom Brady is telling you, hey, we need to do this, it's kind of hard to tell him, like, well, what the fuck do you know? He's the GOAT. You'd be like, okay, yeah, let's go. So looking at it from that perspective, to me, it would benefit the Raiders to move on from Max Crosby and get a plethora of picks back to rebuild your franchise, because you're essentially starting over. Now, they did hire Pete Carroll, but if there's anyone who's all about getting young guys and motivating them, it's Pete Carroll. So imagine if they made this trade and they were able to acquire Max Crosby. Do you think this would be a better option than Myles Garrett, or do you think we'd be in the same exact boat when it comes to getting either one of these two guys?
I think it would be a little easier to get, but it's not too far off the Myles Garrett thing. Whereas Crosby, you'd get, okay, instead of you getting Myles Garrett, because Myles Garrett is better than Nick Bosa. I know that's probably not consensus among a lot of 49ers fans, but he's better. I'd probably argue say way better. Crosby, he's not too far off of Bosa, but Bosa is better, and that would be great. It wouldn't be as much demanding on the salary cap, whatever extension you would give him. Because you got to remember that all these players, the reason why they're being put in these hypotheticals, despite not being linked in many rumors, everything's hypothetical speculation. That's the NFL offseason for you. The reason why they're being linked to these rumors is obviously Garrett Cressida trade. But Crosby, he's going to be due for extension. And like you said, the Raiders need that reset. And it's actually funny that you mentioned that, like, oh yeah, like they haven't done deals with the 49ers in the past. Khalil Mack, they offered a better deal to the Raiders for Khalil Mack than they did the Bears, and they said no, because it was the 49ers. I think, like you said, if Tom Brady's there, Tom Brady's pretty much calling the shots there for, I think, a good majority of the thing. He's like the silent partner. That's why he gets to do both now. So if things go wrong, I didn't have a say in it. If things go right, now he's going to take credit. It's beautiful. It's like something I've seen on the Peaky Blinders, my favorite show, where you just have like your underlings take the brunt of it, and then if the good happens, you're the genius.
Yeah,
so
exactly right.
I think I wouldn't be surprised now if that's going to be more. They're going to be more trade partners now, especially because there's no rivalry there anymore. They've been in Vegas for like 5 years now. But I digress. So yeah, I think that would be more of a plausible option than a Myles Garrett for sure. It's just still kind of not. It's just kind of still in the same realm of like, yeah, that's still going to be a costly one. I get why that. It's like you said, why would the Raiders trade him? Because they need a reset. Well, if you need a reset, you need a haul of picks, right? And how the 49ers going to give a haul of picks again? It's like it's about like trying to maybe you'd salvage more. Maybe you wouldn't have to give an extra pick or two, and maybe one of them will be less of a weighted pick. But you're still looking at pick 11 and all these other, Look, pick 11, no matter what, it's going to be the one that gets you in as the conversation starter for these guys, and you're okay. It's the stacking of packaging of all these other ones that's maybe it's like, like we really need more. Like we can't just keep going top heavy. I get it. Again, maybe if you hit on a couple more of these players the last couple of years or few years, then sure, you could go balls to the wall, just straight send it, go half court shot, and we could. But the thing is, you haven't. And you don't really have the luxury to play fantasy football, Madden team salary cap here. So I wouldn't, if they went for it, I wouldn't be against it. I just don't see it being a reality, especially from a Raiders perspective.
We're talking about Jose Sanchez, writer for SI, covers the Niners for SI. We got one more scenario. In fact, before I go to the last scenario, I have a mock trade I want to show you as well. This is via SF Niners. And this is it right here. Yeah. This is Max Crosby and a 2025 second round pick, which I was like, whoa, you're trying to get a pick back? For Deebo Samuel, the number 11 pick, this year's 4th round pick, and a 2026 4th round pick. Do you think this trade is more realistic?
Hell no. I got love for Brad. He's a good. I always got respect for him, but this is a ridiculous trade. And here's the thing: I used to cover the Raiders before 49ers, and all the people who I still follow on the Raiders side think this is a completely incompetent trade. They're laughing at it. They're like, "Why would we give a second round pick? Who the hell wants Deebo Samuel?" So it's like, it's funny. It's like it's all about perspective, right? When you start dabbling in other fan bases, you start seeing like, "Oh wow," it's like. They think it's ridiculous. Niner fans, it's like, of course, Niner fans would love this. I would love this for the 49ers. I would hit the button to say yes, trade. I would drive Deebo to this airport my damn self. But this trade is not realistic at all. I would love to give the 1st round pick, sure. Give the 4th, because the 4ths are nothing in this case. If you're throwing in day 3 picks, who cares? Those are just tossaways. But yeah, I think the reason why you're getting a 2nd round pick is because the Niners are eating dead cap already from Deebo. But if I'm the Raiders, I'm like, so how is that our problem? That's your fault, So I mean, and plus the Raiders would probably have to extend Deebo, and and you allude to a few minutes ago. If you're the Raiders, you want to get younger. How are you getting younger by going with Deebo, who's not gonna really be I mean, maybe he can find a role in Chip Kelly's offense because Chip Kelly has that random creativity, I guess, that he can play in. But I think this is pretty outlandish, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't know what or how much value Deebo really has. The way that his contract
higher than a 5th round pick, man. I don't know how you get more than a 5th round pick for him.
Well, I mean, the way Deebo's contract is kind of put together, it's a no-win situation for San Francisco. If they trade him, they still end up eating hella money. If they release him, that they actually benefit the most about releasing him.
Yeah, they do.
And they obviously, his agent, they planned this, and the Niners fell for it. And maybe this was the catch all along, was that, hey, I'll sign the extension if you guys agree to these terms. And they were just like, fuck it, let's do it. But, I mean, he's really in the driver's seat at this point. More than likely, he's going to get released as opposed June 1st. And I think that's going to save them, like $10 million? And then
it's going to save them more, and it's going to spread the hits out for like 2 years. So it's pretty much the same situation they were with Eric Armstead last year. It's like, why are you guys... I remember when they extended Deebo back in September, right before the season started. It's like, what? Why? So that pretty much would indicate, usually when you restructure players, right, that usually indicates like, oh, he's stuck for at least another year, because if you cut him, you're going to be dead money. But no, it's like, once I saw that, it's like, no, the 49ers have shown they will cut you if you are not a worthy player, like they did Eric Armstead. So I just didn't understand that. These guys, like, they're great at making contracts, like structuring contracts, but when it comes to these moves, they're just like, they just kind of lose that. They just have no foresight. They don't see anything past, like, they don't see the forest for the trees. They only see in the moment.
Yeah. Well, and then, looking at Max Crosby's numbers real quick. I mean, last year he had 7.5 sacks. He only played in 12 games. Year before that, in 2023, he played 17 games. He had 14.5 sacks. In 2022, he played in 17 games, had 12.5 sacks. So, I mean, the guy is really, really good. Really good. Got a lot of talent. But obviously, out of the guys that we've talked about, I think Myles Garrett is like he's at the top of his game, and he's the biggest, baddest one out there. I mean, if you got him alongside Nick Bosa, that's going to be pretty scary. Let's hope we can run the ball up the middle, and because the Niners maybe couldn't sign anybody else, who knows? But we'll go to one last scenario, and to me, I think this is a more realistic scenario, and that's Joey Bosa. And the reason why is because we know that Joey Bosa may be a cap casualty coming up. And maybe one of those post June 1st cuts. So if they cut him to save salary cap and he becomes a free agent, I think there's a chance that he may want to come over to San Francisco to play with his brother Nick Bosa. And I think if he does, he'd probably do it for hopefully a 1 to 2 year deal. I wouldn't sign this guy to anything more than that. He's been injury plagued his entire career. But what do you think about the idea of Joey Bosa possibly coming to the 49ers?
Yeah, I love it. You don't give up draft picks. It wouldn't cost you too much. It'll probably, have like a good floor of like, okay, it's kind of costly, but maybe you also incentive laden it a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, in terms of not by production, but just availability. Um, yeah, I wouldn't mind it at all because you need ultimately how I see it, the 49ers don't need someone to be their new Batman. They need that second Robin, like that
Yeah.
2019 Nick Bosa D Ford complimentary. They need that second guy. And they thought Leonard Floyd can be that. And Floyd was actually pretty decent for the 49ers, especially, which is funny, especially once Bosa went out. He turned up his pressures and sacks rate, which is cool. So, but look, Floyd is pretty much not going to be that guy that gives you more than 5 impactful snaps a game. You need someone that does a little more and probably even helps in the run game.
Yeah.
And that's what maybe Joey can kind of, maybe they wouldn't do that with Joey because they want to maybe reserve him for more like passing downs, especially at his age.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like it because you wouldn't give up picks. And honestly, like back in New Orleans when I was there, I was talking to a buddy of mine who covers the Chargers, and he was leaning towards like, I think they're going to cut Bosa, but ultimately he was a little like, it was a little questionable. Wasn't sure what they're going to do there, but he thinks they would cut Bosa because he believes strongly the Chargers will want to re-sign Khalil Mack. Like, and one thing about Khalil Mack, I think that what he told them is that Khalil Mack will only want to sign with the Chargers and no one else. If he's going to retire, come back to the Chargers, which makes sense, right?
At his age, yeah. He's like, I don't want to go somewhere else. I don't want him to start over again and, just reestablish myself. Fuck that.
And the Chargers got a lot of salary cap space. And so if you release Bosa, then you get more pace. And then it's like, hey, we can just pretty much swing this money to Khalil, and at least this guy's available and he's still pretty impactful and he's probably a bigger leader than Joey would be. And then if you're 49ers, all right, cool. Here, Joey, here's 2 for 24. We'll guarantee 16 of it or something like that. That's not bad. Frick it. Just do it. Just see what happens. I would love that a lot because you pretty much, and then you could still add more players, someone complimentary in the free agency, and then you could still keep going for your young guys. So I think this is cool. It's kind of it would be a little bit of a not a total low risk, but it'd be somewhat low risk signing Joey Bosa because again, it's always the availability, right? But I would love it for sure. That's more of the realm of realistic, like you said, but also like it just makes sense financially and just resource wise.
No, it really does because the fact that look, he would be a free agent. You could sign him for, wherever you can negotiate for. Let's say it is, 2 years, 16 million. He'd probably do that. And, however, I forgot exactly what you said, but something similar to that, a 2-year deal. And if a bunch of it's guaranteed, I think he would do it because we know that he's been hit by the injury bug more often than not. I mean, last season he played in 14 games. And then in 2023, he played 9. 2022 played in 5 games. But when he's healthy, he played 16 games in 21 and he had 10.5 sacks. Granted, that was a while ago. It's 5 years ago. But we know that he has the potential. And I think that if you added someone like a Joey Bosa, then you could put him in there with Leonard Floyd and Nick Bosa. So you have a 3-headed monster that you can rotate in and out. So you always got at least 1 to 2 pass rushers on the field at all times. Now, how good is he against the run? I don't know. I didn't check that stat, but I think he's not that great. He's more of a pass rusher. So I think still it's a more realistic option because he'd be a free agent, and it gives you the flexibility to still draft who you want to draft with that number 11 pick and moving on through the rest of the draft because we know that they badly need help. The Niners badly need help on both the offensive and defensive lines. That's where they are the weakest. If you're going to spend money on free agents in free agency, right? To me, the big guy out there is Drew Dahlman for your center. Jake Brendel, I think, is fucking terrible. The guy is a joke, and he can no longer be your starting center if you're going to try and win a Super Bowl.
He made the Pro Bowl, man. He ran the Pro Bowl last year, man. What are you talking about?
Oh, okay, Chris Forrester. He's a Pro Bowler. Yeah, he was a fucking alternate. Okay, let's get that straight. But I mean, the guy can't get second level blocking. He's constantly watching as Brock Purdy's getting sacked. It's like the guy. Look, if he's your backup, that's different. That's like, okay, well, he's a backup. He has to come in now and then. But if he's your starting center, the center is the most important position on the offensive line, and that's the guy you're entrusting with that spot is Jake Brendel. I'm sorry, he's got to go. And personally, I don't think the Niners are going to sign Drew Dahlman. I think they're probably going to try to draft one or sign one who's a little bit cheaper. But I think right guard, obviously Aaron Banks is a free agent. I would not bring him back. I don't think he performed well enough this past season to garner what he's going to command, which is probably like 8 to 10 million. No, hell no. But I wouldn't mind to have a battle for that position between, Ben Barch and Spencer Burford. I think you can kind of get away with that for this year, but you got to have a top flight center between him and, him being, Burford and Barch being between, a top flight center and Trent Williams. The right tackle position is another one. I'm saying right now, it wouldn't surprise me if they kept with Colt McKivitz. It would not surprise me because he didn't fail as hard as everyone projected him to fail. He kind of failed upwards. Everyone was like, well, that wasn't that bad. You know what? Why don't we keep him around? So it wouldn't surprise me if they stuck with Colt McKivitz. Do you think that their biggest hole on the offensive line is the left guard, center, or right tackle?
It has to be center, just because that's the area where Kyle Shanahan trusts the most outside of left tackle, right? Because that's the one that calls protections and all that stuff, and that's part of an issue a little bit, right? When it comes to like audibles and like identifying blitzers and stuff like that, the disconnect between quarterback and center. Why people say like, oh, Purdy doesn't have much command, and it's like, no, he has some command. He doesn't have like 100% autonomy, but like, but that's also because not all quarterbacks do for starters. But yeah, center. Because Brendel is what I like to say they call the Ole guy. So for people who don't know, it's like what's the matadors in Spain, like they got the little red flag for bulls, and that's pretty much Drake Brendel with the pass rusher where he just steps to the side and just goes, Ole, there goes my quarterback. And it's like, Jesus Christ, we got Ole guy over here. Just letting him come through. And then on the side of McKivitz, yeah, he was fine. He wasn't good, but he wasn't bad either. That's the one thing, like, I feel like the Niners offensive line gets made out worse than what they were. Like, they weren't great by any means. Particularly, I thought they were worse in run blocking than they were in pass pro.
Oh, yeah.
Because I saw, to me, Purdy held the ball on for too long. And it's a fact. He had the 6th or 7th highest time to throw, but he had the 5th highest pressure rate. So that's something. I mean, I don't need to read the stats. I was watching. To my perspective, I was like, he's holding the ball a little too damn long because he's trying to make a play too much without McCaffrey. So I think they get a little bad rap, but you cannot deny. Yeah, Brendel was pretty much kind of a little lost out there, and then left guard was pretty rough. Aaron Banks took a step back, and then look, left tackle, as much as Williams was out and that kind of hurt him. Jalen Moore, even last year, Jalen Moore did actually a pretty decent job in shrinking the hole to a degree. So, look, I think it was mainly the run blocking that's the issue for these guys. Just missing blocks. Same thing with Banks. Banks was horrible as a run blocker. That was crazy to me. It's wow, what's going on here? And it's like the whole is McCaffrey losing his burst. It's like, well, for me, it's kind of hard to say because when I looked back, I'm not a big all-22 guy. I like to dabble in some games. I don't like to be like, the smartest man in the room, act like I know 100% what I'm talking about. But from my, just seeing just a little bit, it's like McCaffrey had no running lanes in that Tampa Bay game in his debut. Like, where the hell was he supposed to go? Like, and the times he did, he hit it pretty well, and he got to the second level, and he got brought down. So, yeah, I think it's center. We need it because that's where Shanahan. So that center free agent, I've seen people talk about him. I haven't really looked him up too much because I'm not in full free agency mode. I should be more, but I think why they would actually go after that guy you're talking about, especially or any other veteran free agent center that's pretty fairly high level, is that's where the 49ers have known to go after. They did that with Weston Richburg. They did with Alex Mack. So Shanahan doesn't like to mess around with centers and tackles, specifically left tackles. I think those are his two valued positions on the offensive line, and the rest, especially guard, he can pretty much just I'll just grab someone, we just plug and play. But I think ultimately they do need to figure out like, hey, look, there comes to a point where like we need more than just good enough. We just need more than just good enough.
So let me ask you, do you think that Kyle should have made an adjustment earlier in the season to get away from Brendel, or even before the season? And do you think maybe he was going a little too soft on him?
No, because if you found like a really good. Here's the thing, like it makes sense to do that. It's like, yeah, like he's not that great, and they can find an upgrade. But it's also the messaging you send by doing that. It's like, look, he didn't play necessarily too bad last season in terms of 2023, right? You didn't play too bad last season. So if you're the next center or even a starter, it's like, wait, wow, like this guy was playing decent and he just had like a couple of bad things and now you're pulling him. Like, what the hell? It's kind of the same thing why it's like, the whole like, and it starts with, my editor Grant, like fire Kyle. It's like, you can't fire him because if you set this precedent to other head coaches after that, it's like, wow, one bad year, off year, and you're already doing that. Like, that sets a terrible precedent. And now it's like, who the hell wants that job? You don't feel safe. You don't feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And if the moment you do that and you have that bad rep, it takes years and time for that to become buried in the past. So you kind of think for Shanahan, it's like, look, I still believe this guy. I think we can get more out of him, maybe circumvent it. And yeah, it just ultimately it didn't work more times than not. So I think now it's like, and even now, like, how are they gonna, like, what are you gonna do with him if you do upgrade him? You're gonna keep him as your backup all of a sudden? Do you swig him to another position? Do you cut him? It's this. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of like decisions these guys got to make specifically in the trenches. It's like, where do you stop being like, let's not just be more than like good enough or just fairly good. We should be really freaking good there because we want an elite running game and we need good pass protection, especially because, you know, our guy Purdy showed like he holds the ball a little too much and we need to get some time so he can make proper decisions.
Well, and when you look at like PFF's rankings of the center position, you know, Jake Brendel was ranked 21st. And Drew Dahlman, who they've been talking about possibly acquiring, was ranked number 9. So I mean, it's definitely an upgrade.
Who did he play for again?
Atlanta.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I saw because they weren't. That would, yeah. I mean, who does he have a connection with? Dahlman? Does he have a coach he's related to or something? A scout? Or am I tripping?
His dad played for the 49ers.
Okay.
It was Chris Dahlman. Way back in the day. But to me, you have to upgrade the center position. He wasn't good enough. He constantly was making mistakes, and like you were saying, in the run blocking, he was terrible. And you have to solidify that offensive line. When you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, right, they've solidified their defensive line and offensive line, and apparently they're in a position where they may be the front runners to try and acquire Myles Garrett. Now, if they do that, holy crap, I don't know what's going to happen. But when you look at a guy like Saquon Barkley, you saw Barkley play for the Giants, and you knew he was good, but didn't really have the roster to showcase his talents. He goes to Philly, and the guy looks like a freaking superhero. He's the Christian McCaffrey of 2024. So, with that being said, if the Niners were to upgrade their offensive line to get a better run-blocking, pass-protecting offensive line, that's easy to say, easier said than done, but if they were to upgrade the offensive line, imagine the running lanes that Christian McCaffrey would be allowed on an every down basis. I mean, it's huge. You look at Philadelphia, they got Lane Johnson, they got Mialata, they went and got the guy Becton. They had a great offensive line. I mean, the Chiefs defense looked like a high school team against them. It was ridiculous what they did. I loved every minute of that game, by the way. I loved watching the Chiefs just get completely smashed. But so that's one area they need to improve on. And obviously the defensive line's another. Where do you think their weakness is at when it comes to defensive line?
Oh, definitely inside because those guys get pushed around, and I kind of feel like they lost like a lot of like gap discipline and such. Honestly, it's pretty much everyone outside of Bosa. You can't really pinpoint a place where someone was actually good.
Leonard Floyd played good, like you were saying.
Yeah, Leonard Floyd played good. Yeah, especially, you know, he really turned it up when Bosa went out, which is a little weird. Like he went from like a couple of impactful snaps with Bosa to all of a sudden like he stepped up. It was like, okay, cool, yeah. He was decent. It was solid, which is funny because like when I was looking at Pro Football Focus for like article ideas the other week, like they had Isaac Yiadom as the best free agent signing, and I was like, wait, what? No, it's Leonard Floyd.
He was awful.
It wasn't Yiadom. But anyways, yeah, Floyd was cool, but it's like he's cool because he's your, you know, like your number 3 guy. If that's your number 1 or 2 guy, I mean, especially number 1. I understand injuries, but it's like all of a sudden we're a little screwed here. You didn't really churn out any magical talent, but this goes back to really just like you whiffing on those 2022, 2023 drafts. And it's like, you're getting nothing out of them. You know, Khalil Davis, like was cool in college before the injuries, and he was cool in the preseason before he got hurt, but he never really flourished. You know, your whole idea of platooning with Yetur Gross-Matos, with Jordan Elliott, with Malik Collins, like those are whiffs. You know, that's why it was like, when you go through all these, a defensive haul last year, which, you know, they had no choice to because they had a lot of players in the last year of their deal that were going to walk in free agency anyways and all that such. It's like, it doesn't work. You can't just think like we're good enough and just it's going to pencil in. So, and if they did, then perhaps maybe they got to look at themselves like how they evaluate then, I guess, because it hasn't been good with what they're churning out. Or maybe you can point, maybe it's Kaserik's fault. I wouldn't go that far because then everyone like prior players like to like credit him. So it's like if Cassera can't get these guys to churn out, then that just means like you something went wrong in your evaluation process of thinking these guys were going to be adequate.
And this was brought to our attention by NFL.com. Also, Grant Cohn posted this as well, that the Niners are expected to release Yetur Gross-Matos, who, I'm sorry, the guy was hurt, but when he came back, he was really mid. And those two usually don't bode well for your career as an NFL player on a team. I think they'll probably part ways with him, maybe try and save the money that they would have paid him. Because really, to me, it feels like, again, you can get an upgrade from Yetur Gross-Matos in the draft. They have so many picks in this coming draft, and one thing this draft is heavy on is defensive linemen. So I think that's where they're going to target in this draft coming up.
Especially tackle, right? I think it's defensive tackle. That's the main thing.
Yeah, defensive tackle.
There's like 21 great defensive tackles you can get in the first 2 and 3 rounds. And I'm like, well.
Out of all those 21, how many are actually going to pan out? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. It's always hearsay, man. It's always.
But that's the argument when it comes to Myles Garrett and all these other guys, is that, yeah, you're giving up these draft picks, but you're getting a for sure thing. Myles Garrett is out of all those guys, he's the biggest for sure thing. He's like, yeah, if you get me, as long as I don't get hurt, I'm going to fucking dominate every time I go out there. And he's good against the run too. So he's just all around like, I'm going to destroy everyone. Get out of my way. So to me, he would garner the double teams. That would leave Nick Bosa single coverage. And if he can't perform, he can't get past that.
Lining him up on the same side.
Yeah, you're like, what do you do? You're like, okay, it'd be really tough. I mean, same goes with Max Crosby as well. But I do think that Joey Bosa is a more realistic expectation because he's going to be a free agent more than likely. Another player that could be a free agent is Davante Adams. Now, do I think he is the best guy you can get? I don't. But I can see the Niners, if he gets cut by the Jets, I can see the Niners going after him because I think you can get him for a 1-year, 2-year deal to try and win a Super Bowl. And plus, he fills that void. Like he's another version of Deebo Samuel, and not running out of the backfield, but in his overall size. They're both 6'1". They're both like 280, whatever the fuck they are. They have a similar size. So the one thing he doesn't give you, though, he doesn't stretch the field. Davante Adams is not a burner. He's kind of like a Juwan Jennings. So you limit yourself at that, but I think that, again, he becomes a legitimate X receiver, your number one receiver, if you were to sign a guy like Davante Adams. What do you think about the idea of Davante Adams coming to the Niners on a short-term deal to try and win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, I love it. I think it'll just be the cost. That's a little complicated, right? Because you're going to have dead money with Deebo when he does get released, and I fully expect him to get released. Ayuk, it's like, but one thing for sure, they have to sign a receiver. You can't draft another one. I wouldn't like the idea of drafting another one, because you want there to be room for growth for Pearsall. You got Jennings, who's capable, and then Adams can be your number one until Ayuk gets back, if he gets back, because who knows if even whenever he gets back, how long it's going to take him for even come close to form, and that's assuming he ever will get back there again.
We don't know.
Adams would be nice. And you mentioned his issue is not stretching the field. Well, the 49ers don't need that. Their offense, they don't predicate on the deep passing game.
They don't.
The quarterback can't throw that far. We saw him do that against the Rams. He sucks with his deep arm throw. If anything, and Adams isn't a field stretcher in terms of he doesn't have the speed, but he can go on those fade routes and go down the sideline. And because he's not that fast, I think that's perfect for them to take those deep shots because he's a great releaser and separator. He's slow enough for Purdy to not have to overcompensate or miss his arm throw. I think because he's slow enough and will generate enough separation, that'll be enough for Purdy to hit like a 25-yard bomb or something like that. And then Davante Adams can make those difficult catches when Purdy doesn't make like the perfect in the basket throw that he doesn't consistently hit. So I think that'd be great. Ultimately, I think if you're the 49ers, you want to look for a receiver who's an amazing route runner. That's why I mentioned I think Amari Cooper would be a great addition because they wanted to acquire him last year. They said we'll take we'll take a second round pick in Amari for Brandon Ayuk. Take that in a heartbeat. And then Ayuk was like, nah, I'm not trying to go to Cleveland. So I think they would go after Amari Cooper first and foremost, but ultimately Adams makes sense too because you have a great route runner, and at least Adams will give you that leadership that Amari wouldn't and Deebo failed to do. And maybe Adams he wouldn't be a great or even a good run blocker, but at least he can go out there and probably do something and try to do something, right? So I think that would be great. You need separators so Purdy can hit that guy open. And even when people know, we already know it's going to be a 10-yard dagger or the 8-yard dagger, that the 49ers love to raw the shadow crossers that they run for half their passing plays. It's like, well, yeah, we know it's coming, but Devontae's going to separate, and if not, then hopefully Purdy knows to move off and go to Pearsall or Jennings or Kittle. So I would love that. I would love that for sure. I think it should be the cost.
And that's a good point too, is that their offense is not predicated on a fast, deep, a passing game. It's not. Obviously, if you have someone who's a burner, you can use them to stretch the field to, be a distraction to go down the field. But really, all their passes are down the middle and within 10 to 15 yards. So if you got a guy like Devontae Adams, that's what he's all about. And his size and strength would allow him to, be more open and be able to catch those balls, like you were saying, that may not be as accurate. So when we talk about the guy throwing the ball, Brock Purdy, what do you think about his contract? Obviously, there's talks that they want to get this done sooner rather than later. I had Larry Krueger on here a couple weeks ago. We were talking about how, they probably want to get this done before the start of free agency, because you can't go sign a receiver if you don't have your quarterback signed. So there's been talk about his contract starting anywhere from $50 to $60 million. Where do you think his contract should start, or where do you think it's going to start?
I think it's going to start. Well, it's for sure already started preliminary, right? No matter what, it's always started. Even with Brandon Ayuk, they started when I don't know about you, but I know for one thing, why are the 49ers taking so damn long to sign Brandon Ayuk? Like, what the hell? So, I mean, and then.
Well, but not only that, but like they had all these other offers from different teams, and they were like, hey, Brandon, do you want to go to the Patriots? No, I don't want to go there. Okay. Hey, Brandon, do you want to go to the Browns? They're offering no, I don't want to go there. They could have been like, fuck you, you're going to go there. Come on, give me Amari in the draft pick.
The only problem why that wouldn't have happened is because the team would have said no. They would have needed an agreement. They would have needed Brandon Ayuk to sign that extension. That's the only way a trade would have happened. But
yeah,
so that's where, and I think that's actually feels into my logic and what's going to happen with Purdy. First and foremost, I think you got to make this guy play out the final year of his deal. What did he earn? What did he do this past season so that makes you think you can sign him to that lucrative deal that he's probably going to ask for? And second, I think the whole 55, 60 million AAV, all that stuff, I kind of hate those numbers because those are the fake numbers, right? What matters to me always, and it has for like 10 years, 14, whatever, since I've been cognizant of football, is the guarantee, the practical guarantee that's signed, or not signing, but like under contract. That's the one you are tattooed at. And when you look at that, it's like only 5 quarterbacks are, let's see, I have it right here actually because I'm not going to memorize it. Yeah, only 5 quarterbacks are 200 plus guarantee like in their deal. It's Dak, Deshaun, Burrow, Herbert, and Trevor Lawrence. If you're the if he wants something like that, I would laugh him out of the building. My thing is like if Purdy wants to do something, and let's play the annual game. If Purdy wants something like 45, 50, okay, that's a little hard to stomach, but I wouldn't mind that, But my thing is like, what did you do this last season that made us feel good and giving you like a top 5, 8 contract, Purdy? What did you were a terrible decision maker in the games that mattered. You caught the ball up, and with the injuries we had, like sure we weren't totally a dominant top tier talented team because of injuries, maybe some regression, but that's exactly what it would look like if you give you this contract down the line. You instead of you having 4 to 5 star players, you have 1 to 2 or maybe 3. Sure. So I think the reason why you play him on the last year of his deal, you have that franchise tag. And if he says like, so if you're 49ers, give him like kind of not that totally low ball offer, but like something around that 45, 50, 175, 80 million guaranteed. If he doesn't like that, then it's like, all right, we're going to do with you what we did with Brandon. Go talk to these other teams. Go find your value. And then we'll see if we want to match that. Not to say they would trade him. No, they don't trade him. But my thing is like, I don't understand the force or the pressure to extend him now to a deal you're probably not totally comfortable with after the season you had. And then if he does do better than this past season, goes back to 2020, his 2023 form, and even better than that, cool. I'm going to franchise tag you, and then I have no problem paying you better than Dak. Like, Go show me, and what's he going to do? Hold out? Okay, go. We'll see. We'll see if you hold out. Meanwhile, we're going to bring Sam Darnold back or someone. That's my idea.
And that's what they should do. They should bring in a guy like a Sam Darnold or like a Joe Flacco, somebody that you can rely on.
They have no one back there now.
There's nobody back there. Brandon Allen, he sucks. Dobbs is like, get me out of here. Tyler, what's his name? Tanner Mordecai he's still young, but you can't lean on him. But if you bring in a guy like a Joe Flacco, then I think then you could say, okay, hey, you take your time. We're going to get Joe situated with the offense here. And then he's like, oh, shit. Okay, so when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, if anyone wants to see Kyle Shanahan get fired, then you bring in Aaron Rodgers, and then he'll find a way to get him fired. So everyone out there who's like, fire Shanahan, they'd be overjoyed because he'll find a way to get him fired. He'll find a way to get Saleh fired. He'll be like, dude, I wouldn't trust that guy. I wouldn't trust him. Let's get Doge in here. No, but here's the thing. Is that I think that when it comes to Brock Purdy, obviously, look, the market's going to dictate itself. It's probably going to start somewhere around $50 to $60 million, which sucks, but that's kind of the way it's going to play out. I don't think he's going to get Dak Prescott money because really Dak Prescott shouldn't even got Dak Prescott money. That was
a lot of those quarterbacks shouldn't got
$89 million against the cap. It's like, what are you doing? Like, oh, it's awful. But he's going to get something up there, and I think that his first 2 years are going to be at a much lower cost, and then it's going to jump up, and then you kind of have to restructure. It's probably going to be anywhere from a 4 to 6 year deal. Because really, if it's a 4 year deal, after 2 years, you're going to renegotiate. So maybe that's what they're looking at is a 4 year deal. But of course, Purdy's camp is going to want more years and want more money. The way you get more money is you get more years. And that's pretty much what they're going to, I think, what they're going to try and get. But when you look at his body of work, I mean, the guy came in and replaced Jimmy Garoppolo and damn near led the team to the Super Bowl before he got hurt. The next year, what did he do? He had fantastic numbers, and he led the team all the way to the Super Bowl, including 2 comeback wins one against the Packers and one against the Lions. So he did show that even in the playoffs, he was able to put together a comeback to lead them to a victory, which some players, you look at Sam Darnold, he looked awful against the Eagles, but then again, it kind of makes sense because everyone looked. No, they played the Eagles. Who? The Rams. Against the Rams, he looked awful. He was throwing interceptions. He looked scared. So some of these quarterbacks just can't do that. Brock has shown that he can do that. Now, obviously, it's a short sample size. You have 2 years, and then there was this year. And this year, he didn't look his best. I think he looked better early on, and he looked better sort of later in the season when it didn't really matter as much. He looked a lot better. Like, to me, he looked good against the Lions. And I honestly believe that the Lions game, that was the biggest tell that the Lions had a problem because the Niners scored at will against them. And that's when I was like, dude, if this is how they play against the Niners, how are they going to play against teams in the playoffs? And what happened? They got bounced in the first round. And Jared Goff sucks. So I think, yes, I think it's going to be somewhere around probably $55 to $60 million. And do I like it? No. I would love it to be around 45. I'd be like, yes. But it just all depends on what they're going to negotiate. But I do believe that they will get this done before the start of free agency because you can't, if you're going to go out and sign players, you got to have a quarterback already signed. You can't be like, oh, we're going to sign you this fat deal. What about Brock Purdy's contract? Well, we're almost done with that. We're not done yet, but we're almost done. No, you got to have that solidified and ironed out before you go after these other free agents. But real quick, we're up against the gun here. I wanted to ask you one more thing about free agents, Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga. Now, I know that you posted an article over on X. This one here talking about Greenlaw may be leaving and Hendricks could be coming back to the Niners, even though he was only here for like maybe like 6 hours. I want to say, you want to talk to us a little bit about what you posted here?
Yeah, it was just an idea, just considering with the 49ers. I like to try to based on articles, I like to try to think of okay, what could be on the table for 49ers? Like, hey, don't be surprised about this move. And it's just circling back because the Niners at linebacker are essentially in the same position as last year. They are looking for that quote unquote placeholder for Greenlaw. Except this year probably be a replacement, right? If Greenlaw leaves, which I for one think they need to full court press and re-sign him. Maybe even if it bites him the bullet. I get that Greenlaw only played a half of football on 4 snaps, but to me, it's like you could probably chalk it up to look, he probably came back a little too fast. There wasn't really great ramp up period. Sure, they kind of did that in practice a little bit, but they only allowed him a couple weeks or something like that before they had to activate his window or before they got shut down. And playing in the game versus just warming up in practice on the field isn't necessarily the same. So I think for me, it's like you're the 49ers. Look, you saw enough what he did in impact in that 1 half and 4 snaps. It wasn't just what he did productively; it's what he did with the players around him. You saw dudes jumping up and down, feeling that emotion. Yeah. And I've interviewed Charvarius Ward. I've interviewed friggin' as many defensive players on that 49ers team about Greenlaw when I was making a feature piece about him during that Super Bowl week in Vegas. and not everyone had the same answer. Motor of our defense, emotional leader, gets us going, great guy, everything. It's just how are you going to replace that? You don't replace that in the draft. You're not going to find that in free agency. Go ahead and look and see what linebackers on free agency. Eric Kendricks is the best I can come up with, you know. And the only reason why I thought that is because they wanted him last year. Now maybe they 49ers feel a little like, you know, feel some type of way like, nah, hell no, we're not going to go back to Kendricks. You're the reason why we had to go get Devondre Campbell. So now we don't want you. But you know, from Kendrick's perspective, it made sense why he didn't want to like honor his agreement. You know, I'm going to go back with my former coach Zimmer. I'm going to go to a place that's going to allow me to play every game versus like a placeholder in a system that doesn't necessarily fit me 100%. So like, do I think it's going to happen? Probably not, but it's something that I wouldn't be surprised because ultimately, like, you know, I've seen Burrow say like, hey, I lean more on the side that he's probably gone. And I'm like, yeah, like he probably is going to be gone. But to me, it's like, you look at the free agents, who's there? Like, that's the absolute guy they have to bring back. It's not Hufanga. Let him walk. He stinks. He's not good. He takes terrible angles. He's a terrible tackler. He's really regressed ever since week 11 or 12 of 2022 when he pretty much won an All-Pro for his first 10 to 12 games, and then they just forgot about the last 5 games of the season.
He totally fell off that year. He totally fell
off. And then even last year he was like whatever before he got hurt. So
he's an instinct guy. I mean, he's a guy that he's gonna jump. You know,
and he has bad instincts. That's the thing. He has bad instincts.
When they're wrong, he looks really bad.
And the thing about safeties, it's like, if our safety is not fast, that's fine. I mean, it's not fine. We want him to be fast so he can recover. But if you're not fast, you have to play smart and instinctual. And he took so many bad angles. Yeah. That Kyler Murray touchdown would hit with in week 6, week 5, whatever, was his fault. It was his fault. Him and Jair Brown. My God, dude.
Well, him and the linebacker who was there. I don't want to say his name, but you know, he blew that play too. So.
Yeah, they all did. But to me, it's like you're the last line. Safeties are your last line of defense, and we got to hold Hufanga to a higher standard than that. We can't just be like, oh, someone else blew it. It's like, yeah, well, we know Hufanga should be playing better than this. And so to me, Hufanga is going to walk for sure, have no problem. I mean, I think even Mike Silver wrote in a tweet like middle of the season, the Niners don't want him to come back or something like that. I guess maybe because, I don't know, they just wanted to, I think they pretty much already done on him. But Greenlaw's a player, it's like, look, you got to bring back someone. Obviously, they're gonna re-sign several of their players, like who are like low key and stuff like that. Maybe like a Kevin Givens or something, just because they need bodies. But Greenlaw, it's like, look, partly out of desperation, you're razor thin if he walks. What are you gonna do? Run with D Winters out there? I mean, he was decent last year, but do you want to crown him? And Robert Saleh wants him back. You know, sure, you might have to pay him more than you're uncomfortable, but I think he's worth rolling the dice. He's just worth rolling the dice.
And there's talk about Jermaine Sherwood possibly coming over.
I think I would bring Greenlaw back and bring Sherwood in because Sherwood would not be expensive, right? Or he shouldn't be. I understand like he's got good PFF grades. I've seen it, but his grades look more catered towards run defense. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, okay, cool. He's a base package linebacker and he's gotten better a little bit in coverage. So my thing is like sign him. And then if Greenlaw has to go out, that's your number 2 linebacker right there. That would be perfect. And now all of a sudden it's like, cool, now we got our producer Greenlaw replacement who's fitting in. And, you know, he's fairly young. So maybe that's what you like right there. So I think I would like that, the Greenlaw Sherwood thing. And then you got Winters mixing in.
That'd be really good. I'd be really happy with that.
I would like, that's where my hat is. I'm not fully convicted on so many moves that 49ers should make. I'm more like, I like all these options. But that one's the one I'm very convicted on. Like, yeah, do it. Just because I don't know. I haven't looked at draft prospects for linebackers. But also, like, I've definitely seen free agency. That's not a pretty sight of what's out there. Nick Bolton? You want Nick Bolton over Dre Greenlaw? No, you want Dre Greenlaw because you like him.
Well, and the talk, too, is that, you know, is Greenlaw going to command a big contract? I don't think he can get one, though, because he didn't play last year, and he was coming off a bad injury. So, and when he did play, he couldn't even finish the game. Again, look, I understand he's come back off a horrific injury and, you know, he still has to work his way back, but it's still not a good look as a free agent. Like, I kicked ass in that game in the first half. What did you do in the second half? Well, I couldn't come back in because I was gassed. You're like, what? And my knee was bothering me. So, look, they keep saying, well, the Niners would gladly give him a 1 to 2 year deal. And I think they would, but this is just not a guy that I want to see leave. He's a tone setter. He's a leader in the locker room. Having him and Warner together is like the 2 Bash brothers. You know, Doyle rules. You know, that's they're just two big bullies out there kicking everyone's ass. And to be honest, look, I'm going to bring this up. To be honest, if Greenlaw hadn't gone down, they probably win the Super Bowl. Sadly enough, I think they probably do win, but it is what it is. Jose, thank you so much for coming on here, dude. I really appreciate it. Where can everyone find you and all your content?
You guys can follow me at Jose Sanchez on SI on X, aka Twitter. It's forever Twitter for me. Or just look up 49ers Sports Illustrated. My articles will pop up more likely than not on the first page, me and Grant. So we appreciate you guys. Just take 2 minutes of your time to read my articles if you can, and just follow up, and then I'll always be around.
All right. Jose, thank you so much for coming on here. We'll have to do it again.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll see what Niners do. March 13th is right around the corner. That's the beginning of free agency. That's when the new league year starts. And I think that's when we're going to see a lot of fireworks. If you think teams are not talking to players right now, you're out of your fucking mind. They're finding ways to talk to these players. Like, hey, so
there's definitely some ways. You don't think the Bosa brothers are talking to each other? That's already they pretty much got to link up there.
And that's why the moment it hits, you see all these signings. Boom, boom, boom. Because they've been talking already. Like, hey, let's get this done. Yeah.
Chargers are going to be like to the 49ers, hey, we'll cut Bosa so you can sign him if you have no problems with us signing Dre Greenlaw.
Taryn writes, forever Twitter for me too, Jose.
Yeah, it's never X. We don't acknowledge that piece of crap name. It's Twitter gang.
I mean, when I call it X, I feel like a millennial, you know? I'm like, oh, I'm not a millennial, dude. No way.
When they call it X, I feel like I lose a brain cell. So
it's just weird. It was just weird. I didn't like it. I didn't get it. I didn't want to do it. You're listening to the NorCal Sports Report, episode 18 on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Thank you for watching this video. If you want more of this content, then check out some of these recommended videos right here on your screen. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so by going to my website, which is nicotina.net, and there are memberships available under DreArea Sports.